I think this session will start in 3 minutes, and we hope that we can really benefit from it. In Africa, we need this very much. In all the dry areas in the world, we need to see why the decision taken in convention after convention. I think when we were in Kyoto, there was a meeting on, this is the World Water Council. We said water is human right and water is for everybody. What we ended up with, that no translation of this. We said before in several meetings, food is for everybody. It's the right of every human being to have food. But what happened? We have 900 million now who is in hunger and acute malnutrition. I worked for 9 years with Jacques Diouf. I was in the High Committee for the implementation of the Millennium Goals. We have worked, all the heads of FAO, they used to report and give us an idea about what they are doing in the implementation of the global targets. And what happened? It decreased and then suddenly increased again. Because it does not translate. It has to translate to community. It has to be owned by people. People has to work together, and therefore institutions has to correct their course according to the will of the people. And this is what we are hoping for. And let us really work together and see how this next session will be formulated, and the continuation of this session. This session is today, but it will continue tomorrow with Dr. Ismail Swagdeen. We will have some people who have been in the seat of policymaker, heads of states and prime ministers. Tomorrow we'll start with Dr. Jeffrey Sachs. First at 9:30 he will talk, and then after that we will move to the high-level politicians in Europe and in different other places who will give us their experience, why the decision we make in conventions internationally, why it's not translated, why there is a hindrance in this. And meanwhile, they will address other point about the future of this $100 billion, which has gone nowhere. And we don't know, we need to see if this will help, which is just a drop in the ocean to remedy the damage which happened to developing countries from the advanced industrial countries. They will talk about these elements, and therefore, and after that, we will, there will be the closing session tomorrow in the afternoon. I think I was just filling time, and I would like to ask Professor Lal Rutan to start. I think we took 1 minute from him. Professor Lal, we would like to listen to you, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Baltagi. That was an excellent introduction to the next session. I really very much appreciated your wisdom when you highlighted the human dimension. And you mentioned human-based sustainable development. And I think you are very right. We are 8 billion human on the planet now, destined to be 10 billion by 2050 and 11.2 billion by 2100. Therefore, the wisdom of ancient cultures and building upon that wisdom with modern science is going to be a very critical way to address the issue that humanity is facing on. At the present, I would like to focus 3 C's that humanity is gripped with: the conflict, the climate change, and of course the COVID. And this requires all the wisdom we can muster how to sustainably develop the natural resources in a way that we can address those issues. And therefore, the human dimension part. Before I give the floor to very, very distinguished speakers, 5 of them, in which each one will have about 15 minutes, I would like to mention what I learned myself. A few years back, 2013 exactly, I wrote an article, Soil and Sanskriti. And Sanskriti word meant civilization. And there I made an attempt to combine what was the common thread amongst ancient religions, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, in relation to sustainable management of natural resources. And I was pleasantly surprised that they all had very common language. And that was the protection, sustainable management, restoration of natural resources. And therefore, my feeling was that rather than talking about differences, if we were to talk about commonality amongst all cultures, it will be something very nice for humanity. I think it's going to come out in the discussion today, especially the first speaker who has already been introduced, but I would like to say a few more words. Former Minister of Agriculture of Jordan, Professor Mahmoud Duwari, President also of Aslan National University, Director of the Plant Production and Protection Division of FPL Rome, currently working in the Department of Horticulture and Crop Sciences at the University of Jordan, and he has a PhD also from the University of Jordan. We are all looking forward to your presentation, sir, with the title Climate Change Effects on West Asia and North Africa dryland. The floor is yours for 15 minutes.
Thank you very much. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Professor Adel Biltagi for inviting me to be part of this important workshop. Let me now say that WANA in the eye of a perfect stress storm. We are really in a perfect stress storm. Maybe I think, I need to make this introduction. Each driver amplifies the effect of the other under climate change, leading to a systemic crisis. High unemployment, unrest and migration, food and nutrition insecurity, demographic change, gender inequality, urbanization and heat islands, land degradation and desertification, loss of agrobiodiversity. This important topic, I will be also talking about it more than this. High water scarcity and low efficiency. Professor Adel, made me speak about how Jordan is really affected by the low water in Jordan and the double impact of climate change, increasing temperature, and reducing precipitation. Myself, I have been a researcher and I heading the national research in Jordan. And later on at the end, I will really have some remarks about the research centers and the results of the research at the end of this seminar. The water in WANA, it is the key to enhance food security. Water scarcity is increasing per capita and stress. It's not only in Jordan. Agriculture water still big, but will already declining. The climate change adds to the problem and how to achieve more food with less water. This is an important question without maybe having good answers. The current approaches are insufficient, and later at the end, my conclusions will be also that the current approaches are not sufficient. Increasing crop yield needs more water. Managing demand, little success. Improving irrigation efficiency, little saving at scale. modernizing irrigation systems, and there is a more demand for that. Climate change from global to local. This is, I think, downstreaming climate parameters to local level. Assessment of projections at local level. Understand the impacts on resources and the productivity. Evaluation of CSA, product practices, and political for scaling up. The downscaling climate parameters, simulating impact of change parameters, and evaluating responses, CSA, coping potential scaling. Unless action is taken, I will repeat this many times, the region faces large economic losses. And this is also at the national level. Arab region faces the largest expected GDP losses from climate change-induced water scarcity in the world, between 6 to 14% of GDP by 2050. Disruptions go well beyond just economic impact. A nexus approach is unavoidable. High cost of inaction and significant benefits beyond the sector. We need to improve the quality and the quantity of spending in this sector. Significant opportunities to modernize and revisit agricultural trade balance. Importance to align water, land, food, and the trade policies to remove disorders, unlock investment, and think sustainability. What will this mean to researchers in the context of the region? Okay, this is, I was involved also in a regional, which when Dr. Adil Baltagi was really heading the CARDA. We have a biodiversity project at the Wana region. Saxena, Dr. Mohan may remember this also. And we have good results, but okay, from this what we will expect. Foresight and perspective research on the 4 pillars: availability of the food, access, utilization of the food system. Research tends to focus on production compared to sustainable production and consumption. Research is challenged to go beyond success: land, water, energy, trade, health, nexus. The impact at scale requires a better linkage to countries' vision and large program. Multiple tracks research is missing. Natural resource and socio-economic disconnect from policies. And new technologies are moving fast for food delivery and waste than for climate resilience and alert system and resilience. What all this means to research in the context of the region. Research role and connection to SDG and NDS in fragile context is an opportunity. The climate finance is an example. Less than 5%, and only 4 countries, they get 95%. Serious implication in the change of human resources and institutional capacities. Sustainable funding should take over projects and programs funding. Impact at scale means a good scan of countries' investment, plans and vision. The water scarcity. The average fresh water per capita is 500 meter cubic per capita, and this is compared to less than 100 cubic meter in Jordan. All regions are at high risk. 10 most threatened countries are in the Middle East and the severe water stress. Jordan is one of those. Physical scarcity, non-renewable groundwater, desalination, wastewater reuse. Effects of regional climate change: reduced precipitation, increased temperature. It is expected that it will be 5 degrees by 2100. Effects of regional climate change: increased in intensity and frequency of extreme events, drought, heat wave, floods, dust storm, disease and pest outbreaks, loss of home, loss of livelihood, sea level rise. This is okay. Effects of regional climate change: extreme events, as we said, heat waves, floods, dust storms, sea level rise, salination of coastal groundwater. Now, as I mentioned before, agricultural biodiversity, this is unimportant because Dr. Adil is interested also in, and we are interested in the plant genetic resources. The larger trend is the agricultural biodiversity. There are 400,000 plant species identified in the planet, 30,000 known to be edible, 6,000 only used for food. 150 crops are cultivated on significant scale worldwide. 3 crops, maize, wheat, and rice, are the major crops. Let me move again. The research agenda, climate impacts on current displacement trends, forecasting of a future climate displacement, role of climate change in generating long-term resource scarcity and the specific impact on women, the quantities of social vulnerability to be integrated in climate risk model, and lessons learned. Bridging the science policy gap, enabling evidence-based decision-making and reforms, increasing use of data and information, not just the quantity of it, and articulating the climate security nexus with data, evidence, and trends to convince and enable. I really bring these points, they are known, but really because we have lots of research, segmented research, the countries, the regions, the world are maybe not benefiting, and this will come also in the final of my talk. Now, let me just repeat again, we had an agriculture and agrobiodiversity in arid and mountainous regions, and unfortunately, 2 of our colleagues who were working on this project, Dr. Nasri Haddad and Dr. Kamil Shadid, very prominent scientists, have passed away. We have lots of results in the agrobiodiversity project in the Fertile Crescent. Unfortunately, I would say that we have not implemented the conclusions from this research. What are the lessons learned in this? Thanks again to Professor Adil when he was DG of ICARDA, he really tried to see that some of these projects should be implemented. I am still interested in the biodiversity side of it, and if we are going to come to this in Jordan, and we, with some projects from UNDP, we really try to make a network at the national level. And I think, FAO is interested in making networks. There should be more networks to benefit from the biodiversity. It is beyond the germplasm. In Jordan, also a big accomplishment, and it is that the government, His Majesty the King, was also interested in making a national genetic resources project in the country, and this is being implemented. Now, the Jordan is facing the climatic changes that affect agricultural production and these challenges are expected to worsen in the coming years. Climate change will place significant food security and livelihood stress on Jordan's poor and vulnerable population. It may also hamper the further development of Jordan's agriculture sector, which increasingly depends on export market. So the export market may be affected. The World Bank, with the Biodiversity International and the government of Jordan, they issued earlier this month, said that a report which said that the crops currently grown in Jordan will change. For example, because some of the crops which are demanding lots of water will be will be ignored. So, and barley and wheat will become more marginal. However, olive yields will remain stable, while tomatoes and dates are expected to increase. And let me say that, a crop which is taking a big a big supporter, especially from the United Arab Emirates. The dates they are increasing in the Near East in general. The report noted.
You may conclude in 2 minutes if possible.
2 minutes, okay. The report noted that climate change will pressure Jordan's water resources and adversely affect agricultural production through water scarcity, higher temperatures, and more frequent extreme events. I am coming to that is what, to address the climate change. That is why that the Biodiversity International, the World Bank, and the government of Jordan and ICARDA, they put a report for the utilization of the climate SSA, the climate smart agriculture. And I hope that Jordan will, is interested in the application of this, the outcome of that. Now, there is a very recent report from FAO and European, and which says a limited number of studies assess the costs and benefits of climate change adaptation options for the agriculture sector in the NENA region, with a majority of these published in the last 10. Adapting the crop management techniques to climate risks generates a net improvement in Near East and North Africa yields. However, adaptation responses aiming to increase agrosystems resilience show context-specific effectiveness. Water management options which benefit crop water use efficiency to different extents present relatively high implementation cost. An urgent need is to promote adaptation research for the various farming systems in the NENA region and to estimate the cost of adaptation measures to guarantee farmer incomes and food security in the phase. In conclusion, WANA region is one of the world's regions with the lowest per capita natural resources availability and one of the most vulnerable to climate change. For these reasons, there is an urgent need to improve the development and implementation of adaptation plans and actions to cope with the climate change. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Tiwari. That was an excellent presentation on unless, and I'm repeating your word, the actions are taken, the loss of GDP by 2050 will be very drastic, and climate finance, many other decisions which are science-based must be taken immediately. We are very grateful for your presentation. We'll move forward to the next speaker, Professor Dr. Sameh K. Abd Al-Mabod from the National Research Center, NRC of Egypt. He's in the Department of Soil and Water Use with expertise in GIS, soil science, climate change, water resources, remote sensing, ecological assessment, agriculture management, spatial analysis and modeling for the analysis of global change. Very good academic credentials. And the topic of presentation is past and future impact of urbanization on land surface temperature in Greater Cairo over a 45-year period. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, sir. First, I would like to thank His Excellency Professor Adil Al-Biltagi for the invitation, and a very big pleasure to give a talk in the session that directed by Professor Lal. So, first, we studied the status of urbanization in the whole Nile Delta, and Greater Cairo is included over there. So, in the left side, we can see the land use, land cover of Egypt. We are living on only 5% of the total area of Egypt, 100 kilometers square. In the right side, we can see the location of the Nile Delta and its 13 governorates. Sorry. And we studied the biophysical line. In the left side, the sub-figure A presents the elevation in Nile Delta, where the elevation ranged between 7 meter below sea level, and it can go for 700 meter above sea level in immediate surrounding areas. In sub-figure B, we can see the dominated soil types, where the dominated soil order is anti-soil and reedy soil, and the dominant subgroup soil is vertic refluent that occupied around 29%. Sub-figure C represents the irrigation and drainage canal, and D the land use land covers of Nile Delta. In the right hand, we can see the over time 4 data, the changes in normalized vegetation index. So we can see the agricultural land have lower NDVI value in October because the farmers are preparing the soil, the land for cultivation or sowing. That's why the NDVI value is low. When the winter crops are fully grown, so we can see in February increased the normalized vegetation index values. With the same trend that's happened also in summer crops. For the climate in the study area, we can see below the 15 millimeter in the past 5 years. This is the mean precipitation for Cairo Meteorological Station. However, the precipitation can reach to 160 millimeter in Alexandria, but this it's extremely arid, not sufficient to cultivate any crop. So we take in account the amount of water that enter from the river Nile, and we can see another figure where the yellow areas have been disappeared. The yellow area represent the aridity. So when the evapotranspiration more the amount of water, it appears this area. So the top figure represent the water amount that receive any governorates in the Nile Delta, and also the amount of water that distributed by the different type of crop season, where the Kahleya more water receive and summer crops more water receive too. So we studied the land use, land cover in the Nile Delta using imaging processing and remote sensing technique. So what we found that the urban area have increased from 450 kilometers square to 2,650. That means we lost around 5 million feet done of the fertile soil. 5 million feet done. Half million feet done. Half million feet done of fertile soil. On the other side, we see also how much is the expansion of new agricultural land in the immediate surrounding area. So we can see that the agricultural land have increased over the 45 years by 8,000 kilometers square. That means 1.9 million feet done. And the more time of reclamation land was between 1984 to 1992. Then the rate of reclamation land is slowed. And here we can see images that shows the different land covers that we can see in the Nile Delta. Informal urbanization, the most fertile soil, reclamation of new cultivated lands, planned urbanization, and aquatic vegetation close to the North Lakes. So in the other figures, we can see that the total population of Egypt was 36 million in 1972 and increased to 100 million. So even, however, the agricultural land, it was 25,000 and increased to 37,000 kilometers square. So that's why the agriculture area per capita have been decreased. Even we reclaimed 1/9 1.9 million feet done, because the increasement of new cultivation land not meet the huge increasement of population. Also, we studied the impact of this urbanization on soil carbon. So here we can see the map of soil carbon for the whole Nile Delta. We can see how much the old land, it's very rich in the soil carbon content compared with the new cultivated land. So we lost from 25,000 megagram. Now we lost due to urbanization 141,000 of carbon stock. So urbanization and the climate change, the majority of scientists that working in the climate and the earth science, the opinion about the global warming, they said it's largely caused by human. But few of them said human have no impact on climate change. So let's go with the majority, but even not the majority not always right. Here we can see urban heat island. What does it mean, urban heat island? Heat islands represent that we have an area that have temperature, more temperature rather than surrounding area. So that's mean heat island. If this area have temperature less than the surrounding area, it can called cooling island. So the cooling island it's a water bodies and green space. And here we can see how the air surface temperature and the land surface temperature in the downtown is high compared with rural and the sub-rural areas. So we did papers that already accepted. So we see the land cover, how it changes the land cover in Greater Cairo, and how is this, it changes in land cover by reducing cold islands and increasing heat islands can affect the land surface temperature. So here we can see the agricultural land in the Greater Cairo dropped by 150, while the urban area have been increased by 170 kilometers square. So here we can see the ground photo for the major land cover. The techniques is based on using satellite images with 30-meter resolution, different satellite images, and also we measure different indices, vegetation index, water index, building index, and the land surface temperature interval. Here we can see that the land surface, we studied the land surface temperature over the summer months from May to August and over 45 years. We can see how in the land surface temperature in 86 had the lower land surface temperature compared with 2017 and the predicted year in 2030. This figure, so okay, we said, okay, let us know exactly how much is the area of each land surface temperature. So we calculate how much area occupied each land surface temperature to see exactly how will be the changes. So here in this figure, we can see that there is a steadily increasing in land surface temperature, whereas the mean value going toward this higher land surface temperature values. And this is totally agree with the work that presented by Peter Gillick that said in the new climate, sorry, the figures not appear, in the new climate there will be more extreme drought. So that's, we can see month of May, it's extreme change, extreme shifting towards a higher land surface temperature compared to the other months. Even the other months also have a higher shift. Then, okay, we said, let's see the different land cover, land use that we have. We did small plots around 330 small plots, and to represent the different land, the cover land use that we have. So we have totally water, agriculture, totally agriculture, agriculture associated with urban, urban associated with agriculture, and totally urban. So we can see here that the red line represents the mean land surface temperature, while the water bodies has the lowest land surface temperature value compared with urban. And
Please try to conclude in 2 minutes.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And here we can see a fine contour map. So we choose six plots distributed in the Greater Cairo, and even the plot A, there is no changes in land cover, but there is increase in temperature as a result of it changes in the surrounding areas. So in the other figures, we can see in the figure C and D how is the urban area is increasing and how it can affect increase itself in temperature and affect in the surrounding area. In the other figures, we can see the different amounts in each plot, how is the increase in land surface temperature over the time. We studied the hot plot. We studied the ring road, the western side of the ring road, and we see how it changes in land cover. So the agriculture and land was 72 in 86, and now the urban area is 72. So that's lead to high. So in establishing routes on agricultural land accelerate the urbanization process. And this acceleration in urbanization process lead to increase the land surface temperature from 31 to 37. We are speaking about 6 degrees, and it's predicted to reach to 38.9. We did the same in the buffering zone around the River Nile, but there is no changes, big changes in land cover, but there is still a change in land surface temperature, were increased by around 4 degrees. This may increase the evapotranspiration. The sub-figure A represents the changes in the mean temperature over the summer months. So we can see how we are speaking about 5 degrees. The other figure that when we reach to critical temperature threshold, the crop will be reduction, and then when I think now we are going to the limiting threshold when we will have a failure crop. So then we studied, we just masked the agriculture area in 2017 to see how it affect on agriculture area. It was 30 degrees, and now it's 35. So around 5 degrees increase, and it's predicted to reach to 36. Then we see the urban area. We only masked the urban area. So the urban area has a mean temperature was 33, and now is 38. That means it affects the thermal comfort, and the energy will be need more energy. So here we see the transect.
Just a second, Doctor.
Okay.
Professor Lal, I discovered that we had the written program say that this session ends on the 17th, which we still have until 5 o'clock if needed. We can make a panel form or whatever, but I just have seen a written program that your session, this session ends up on the 17th.
So each speaker can have 30 minutes? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. My
and we can go back to Dr. Dwevi after that if he has further comments. Thank you, Professor Lal. I'm sorry.
So we'll make
Bye.
it 30 minutes rather than 15 minutes.
So I have time? Okay. Perfect. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
You have another 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Okay, we did a transect, and this transect is land surface transect. And this transect is, the length is 2 kilometers and 100. So this transect is divided to sub-transect So we have a value each 30 meter. This is the resolution of the satellite image to see the impact of water bodies and green space, park, and the golf and agricultural area in reducing land surface temperature. So the red line represents the land surface temperature, the blue line represents the water index, the green line represents the vegetation index values, and the gray line represents the urban index. So when we have the first one is the River Nile, transect passed from the River Nile, so we can see how the land surface temperature is dropped. And here this is the rule of water bodies, how the changes in land surface temperature, and this is the impact of green spaces in reducing land surface temperature. So regarding to the mitigation of land surface temperature, so the atmospheric factors like wind, cloud, precipitation, air pollution, and the fog, it will affect it will indicate us how to mitigate the urban heat island effect. For example, depending on the population in a city, Palo Alto, that have 33,000 inhabitants, the threshold for really mitigating the urban heat island is ranged between 3 to 5. On the other hand, in London, where the population is 8,500,000, the threshold of wind is 12 meter per second. So here is the mitigation strategy, as Professor Osama and Professor Abu Al-Hadid presented, the rule of rooftop vegetation in reducing the urban heat island effect phenomena. Also should be an air corridor, green spaces, water spaces, and we can use energy efficiency. This also strategies to reduce the urban heat island impact. And regarding to the infrastructure, we should use a material that have high albedo. The other image represent the different albedo values for the different material. So these strategies help us to reduce energy consumed and lower carbon dioxide emissions, lower nitrate oxide emissions, and lower ozone. So the conclusion is urban heat island, it may lead to climate change, increase the evapotranspiration, and lead to changing land use, land cover. We know all we know that the meteorological station is limited in covering a concerned area. But with using remote sensing, high accuracy data, it's a very benefit. So our result helps the decision maker to know the cool benefits that come from the cultivated land around the city and the role of water bodies and the green space in reducing the land surface temperature that can reach to 6 degrees. Urban sprawl should go to the desert, and there is a big challenge to Egypt to cultivate new cultivation land, especially under extremely arid conditions. And as Professor Beltagi said, we are going to acute water poverty is less than 500 cubic meter per year per capita. So this study that we did, it can be useful for any other country that have the same condition. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Almabaud. That was an excellent, very comprehensive, very detailed observations on impact of urbanization. And sorry that we had to interrupt you. You had more time than I initially thought. But you made some excellent points, and I took note. Maybe there are some questions. We will also go back to Professor Duwari for his extra time in case he needs it. I was very impressed that you indicated population in 1972 was 36 million, then present 100 million. As a result, very rapid urbanization. where the carbon stock decreased from 250,000 megagram to 141,000 megagram, and per capita agricultural land area decreased. The temperature due to urbanization increased from 31 to 37 degrees Celsius. Very remarkable. Therefore, I think it brings back to the question the need for protecting prime agricultural land against encroachment by urbanization.
As you said, sir, the soil have a right to be protected.
Have a right to
Yeah.
protect. Yes. Thank you. Any comment, question from the audience?
Any questions? The audience. عشان ما فيش قهوة ولا شاي ولا غدا ما فيش أسئلة كمان. اتفضلي. أنا دي ميكروفون. اتفضل.
Thank you so much for your presentation. The question is, can we connect this work with wheat productivity, or we can say strategical crops in Egypt, especially in Delta region, to compare the land surface temperature raising and with the production of our strategical crop like wheat and so on. So what do you think of connecting previous work like historical data from temperature and connecting is with predicting the impact of the rising temperature as the impact of climate change on our wheat production and how mitigate this? Thank you.
That's a very good question. That there is a recent publication paper in Global Change Biology. It's a very good journal. That mentioned that the increasing of land surface temperature and the changing and the urbanization and the emission of warm gases can lead to decrease the wheat yield in Egypt to 50%. 50% of reduction due to the changes of land cover land use. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, there is another question from Professor Mahmoud Ayed Dwari. You are muted.
Thank you very much. I have a comment, since we are talking about the problem of water resources in Jordan. And it was mentioned about the population, the increase of population in Egypt. Jordan also, we have suffered in the past years from dramatic increase in the population. And this was due to the influx of refugees. First from Iraq and then from Syria, and before that, from Kuwait, the Palestinians. So we have increased, which puts a lot of pressure on the water resources in Jordan. I mean, we were suffering before,
exactly.
And when we have this influx of people, that is our water resources have been affected. In addition, some of the refugees.
Your microphone, Professor Douari, I think we need the voice much more clear if you can increase the volume. Thank you.
Now, what about now?
Yes, good.
Okay. I may repeat maybe, that, the increase in the population of Jordan has been tremendous because of the refugees problems. We have refugees from Syria, more than 1.3 million. We have refugees before that from Iraq, and before that even we have more refugees from the Palestinian refugees or the refugees who were in Kuwait, they came to Jordan. So this has really put a lot of pressure on the capacity of Jordan in the different aspects, especially in the water aspect. So this is really, we are suffering from the poor water capacity, and this has really put a lot of stress on our water resources at that time. In addition, some of the refugee camps were settled on the top of some of the aquifers of water in Jordan, and this really created another problem. So this is really, I think, should has been taken should be taken in consideration, that when we write or say something that this is about the water resources, how we can help Jordan into this aspect.
Professor Abd Al-Mahmoud, do you have any?
Yes, totally agree. When we have more population, more stress on natural resources that we will have. So that's totally agree. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you again, Professor Al-Mahmoud. We do want to go back to Professor Dewari, but let's first thank you for excellent presentation.
Thank you very much.
I think very top quality work that I had not seen monitoring urbanization impact on soil and climate. So going back to Professor Dewari, we did not have to cut your time down, but now that I'm advised that we have more time, perhaps we can have a few more comments from you. I specifically wanted to go back to your statement that per capita water availability in Jordan, 500 cubic meter per year.
No, now it is
even 100.
It is less than 100.
Less than 100.
Yes,
compared to average.
I think the sound for us is not very high. I asked them in the control room to see about it, but it's not, I don't think it's in your own computer, but we'll try to amend it. Please go ahead, but we will try to hear you better. Thank you.
Can you hear me when I make comments?
I hear you, but the sound is not very high. So, yeah, okay. Please go ahead.
All right. So please tell us something more about per capita water availability and what can be done about it, especially with the influx of refugees, as you mentioned, from Syria, Kuwait, and elsewhere.
Well, this is a problem for the strategy for our water. This is, first of all, I mean, since the topic is in agriculture, it is affecting our agriculture strategy because, the available water to agriculture is normally not of the best quality, and if there is an aquifer which has, underground water, some of the waters are underground water. In the Jordan Valley, maybe I don't know if you know the case of the Jordan Valley, we receive from the neighboring countries, we have conflicts, which we hope that we can solve this problem between our neighbors. We feel that it is not a just solution so far. And however, the major problem is the drinking water. And the drinking water is, all the priority is for drinking water. The second priority is in, industry, then tourism, then agriculture is at the last. Fortunately, we have good system for wastewater treatment, which can go to some of the agriculture crops. So this is something good. In addition, as we said, is the climate smart agriculture is going in Jordan. We are among the countries which have benefited from technologies into this. And we have greenhouses, plastic houses. We want also to use now a more developed using the technology to benefit from this.
Thank you. Maybe we have some questions from the audience. Please speak close to the mic.
I think it's the very harsh issue in this process, Professor Lael, is that some people in different sessions in COP26 in Glasgow and before that, it happened in Copenhagen, it happened in Cancun. What they say after they thought about the problem, they say, why these people stay where they are. Let them move. And they call it transition. Then we handle this as a global community to ask people or a whole nation, please leave your place and go somewhere. And when you go somewhere, because it will affect their grass, because they have better meadow and green, they will either you lose your life in the sea, or you will stay in the border and you will never allowed in. It's easy said. That's why developing countries need a solution in their own home, not by telling them with luxury, go somewhere else. And I would like your comment first. I'll ask the wisdom of Professor Lal and Professor Dueri. Thank you.
I think that's an excellent point you bring, Dr. Baltagi. There are 35 million refugees at present, globally. This is before the Ukraine crisis. And Ukraine crisis, the approximate estimate is another 10 million out of the country, but much more than that. So refugee crisis is a global crisis, and you are very right. We must create conditions in the country so that people's basic necessities are met there. And I think this is a very important, this brings back to the question, sustainable management of more finite resources, the land and water, how to protect them against misuse, abuse. So Professor Dueri, your comments on that will be very important, especially since you brought up the GDP loss and the influx of refugees from Syria and Kuwait into Jordan. What is the solution? Solution that we do not simply make a slogan at COP, but actually implement it at home.
Well, I think, the government of Jordan, we are overwhelmed in Jordan here by the brotherhood thing. I think, we feel the Arabs, the Muslims, even beyond that. We have a government and the people, they feel that we want to share. We want to share with them our resources. But unfortunately, maybe, as I said, we have not planned very well, because we thought that the refugees are coming for a few years, few months, and then they will go back. This hasn't happened so far. And, so we need also financial resources, and Jordan is, and this is happening. I mean, when we talk about Jordan, we could really put with Jordan other nations, which are poor nations, financially poor, and etc. Because you need resources to have to take care of these refugees. We feel that they should go to schools, to universities. They should be treated well, etc. So this is again is taking the money from the budget, in the country, which is also is suffering, to help its own people, etc. So this is something. As I mentioned, if you are talking about Jordan, it is the obligations toward the neighbors, toward the Arabs, toward the Muslims, etc. So this is really is having this in our mind.
Thank you. That's very important. One more comment, Professor Baltagi, to your remark. We have political refugees. That's one issue. We did have political refugees, and that problem has not been solved. But now we have climate refugees, and we have water refugees, and we have soil refugees, and we have food security refugees. So this is where the issue has to be addressed right at local level, where the basic necessities of humanity are not met, therefore they are forced to leave. Therefore, we have to take action, and hopefully COP27 will emphasize that part, how to make sure that natural resources are managed in such a way that the basic necessities of everybody are met.
I think, well said, Professor Lal, that we have political refugees, water and food and soil, and it's all environmental refugees, but climate change refugees. The point is, and I hope that we had a lot of students and staff in the audience here, the very staggering point is that the projection for climate change, even with 1.5 degrees, we are talking about addition to the 35 million refugees. Now, you will have another 200 million. This is Professor Meyer from Oxford. But other people are suggesting that if we go with report 6, part 2 on adaptation and the segment for out-migration, there is some people who are demographic, they suggest that it could go up to 1 billion. Imagine we are now 7.93 billion people living on this planet. If we will have 1 billion of them moving around, with the analysis of His Excellency Professor Doueri, and he was with the government as well, with international organization like FAO, he was president of a couple of universities. He knows exactly what he's saying. But it's not a matter of emotion, it's humanity. What are we going to do? And the solution is in the resolutions taken before Paris in Copenhagen. We said we will have a fund for adaptation, we'll have a fund for moving science and technology to the needy. Nothing happened. We have gone from there. I attended COVID in Copenhagen. Then we moved to Cancun. Same thing happened. Promises, no translation. And therefore now we are talking about the catastrophe of 1 billion, between 200 million to 1 billion people moving from their countries to countries they are hoping it will be better and it will accept them as a human being, not as slaves. And therefore, it's just, I'm just saying this, it's not a matter of raising the bars, because the bars are already there. And therefore, we seek your wisdom again, Professor Lal. Your comments then.
Thank you very much. I think you are very right. COP21 in Paris in 2015 had planned to $100 billion committed. And there were pledges made for $100 billion. But nothing was contributed. In fact, I know one country that contributed $1 billion, but it was not actually delivered. So I think this is where the making commitment and not translating in the words into deeds is an issue which we have to address. And I think it's not a problem simply of developing countries not raising their voice, but also making sure that people who go to represent national members of the United Nations, they make sure that when they come back to their nation, when they come back to home, the commitments made are implemented. And that point needs to be emphasized again and again. I think maybe we can come back, but with your permission, Dr. Baltagi, should we move on to because now is the time we are giving everybody half an hour. So perhaps a time to move on to the speaker. Thank you. So I think this discussion has been very important to our next presentation by Honorable Dana Merriam, which I'm very pleased to share her credential as a founder of the Global Peace Initiative of Women, practitioner in the linkage of Kriya Yoga, and follower of Guru Paramahansa Yogananda in the Vedic tradition. She is a strict follower and very knowledgeable of law of karmic unfolding. And she is a writer of a very famous book called The Untold Story of CETA. I admire her academic credentials and her qualification and invite her to make a presentation, the changing our relationship with nature. The floor is yours for about 25
Professor,
minutes. And have commercial
Dr. Miriam isn't online with us. Can we proceed to the next speaker?
The program I have mentions next speaker number 3 in the line is Honorable Dana Mariam.
She is not in. She didn't show
Not
up.
here.
No, Professor. Only Dr. Aliat showed up. Can we proceed?
Dr. Sharon McGavis showed up.
No.
Okay. So the next speaker then is Dr. Sharon Majaris.
No. Even Dr. Sharon didn't show up. Can we go to Dr. Aliat?
Okay.
Dr. Dina is connecting right now. We can make it after Dr. Aliat or now?
If they will, I don't know. Something happened. Okay.
So out of the program that I have is really not correct.
It is correct, but somehow they didn't show up. We can move to the next, the third
next
speaker.
speaker-
Yes,
In my program is Sharon Majaris.
Sharon McGavis. Yes, from
Okay.
from California, and then Professor Alia.
Alias Rafia. I think she's here. I can see her. But what anybody else? None of the other two speakers are there?
I suggest maybe somebody will connect them, maybe because of the difference of the time. Maybe it's very early for them. They always it's 4 o'clock Cairo. It means like 6 hours if they are in the east, and this is for the Gina.
Yeah, that may be the case. That
yes.
right.
If
But
they
also the
Can you hear me?
yeah, we can hear you.
here. Gina's
The video is not working.
Are you there?
yes, Gina. I can recognize Gina's voice now.
Okay,
yeah.
sure.
But I don't know why the video is not working.
The video is not working.
There's no video. When it says in my thing, it says the video is on. Maybe I'll try from another computer.
Okay.
Yes, please.
We can see Professor McGarris, but Dina is not
I
there.
can see Dr. Miharis. I can see Dr. Miharis. She is here. She's around.
She's
Can
from
we-
California.
Try to get on again.
So may I introduce Professor Majaris then?
Okay, Professor McGarris.
Okay.
Miharis.
Sorry about confusion. I think there are two confusions. One, the time difference. The other, the program that I have has a different time than we are talking about. Maybe mine is the outdated program. Professor Sharon McGarris, psychologist and professor. Sorry, did I pronounce his name wrong?
Yes, you did
My
well.
apologies. Okay. So you are Dr. Sharon, am I right?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And are we speaking as a group or I'm a little,
We will be, the way program is with me, you'll speak for a few minutes, maybe 20 minutes or more,
Okay.
I think, and then we can have discussion.
oh, okay. Is that now?
Let me introduce you, and then the time I'll give you in a moment.
Okay.
So, Professor McGarris is psychologist and professor from California Institute for Human Science and National University. She's the lead author of several books about the power of the feminine, integrating and psycho-spiritual approach and more positive healing process. And her presentation is entitled "The Decision for Environmental Restoration is a Human One." Very perfect introduction given by Professor Al-Baltaghi when he introduced this session. So please now, I invite you to make your presentation, and the floor is yours.
Greetings, everyone. I am very pleased to join you in this very important endeavor. The title of my talk is "The Decision for Environmental Restoration is a Human One." The IPCC, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, put out the word that we have until 2030 to quit using fossil fuels, and to prevent the continuation of agribusinesses that are destroying rainforests, and to engage in a major effort to protect oceans. The report noted that, quote, urgent changes needed to cut risk of extreme heat, drought, floods, and poverty, end of quote. Yet, nations make plans for changes to be in place by the year 2050. We need more people coming to the table who recognize this is the most important thing facing us and our home, the planet we live on. It needs everyone's attention and care. Time is a crucial element. Grassroots endeavors can work alongside their governments in order to enact plans for climate restoration. This is real important. Everybody needs to come to the table. In the book, Earth in Human Hands, Shaping Our Planet's Future by David Grinspoe, he notes, more than the extreme and undeniable physical changes to the planet being caused by human influence, it is this dawning self-recognition that is really fundamentally different and ultimately promising about the Anthropocene. Many species have changed the planet to the benefit or detriment of others, but there has never been a geological force aware of its own influence. End of quote. This influence is immense, but how many people give quality attention to caretaking of our environment, our home? When we think of 8 billion people, which we're rising, that means a lot of people are not paying attention. Being cognizant of the human journey is important, as we need to know our past as well in order to transform the future. Human beings appeared on this planet approximately 5 to 7 million years ago. As hunter-gatherer societies, we lived in harmony with nature. The humans eventually learned how to manipulate the environment. For example, around 11,000 years ago, agricultural practices began. The idea that we could control nature was beginning its emergence. Humans began congregating and growing cities, becoming more sedentary. They no longer moved in harmony with the seasons. The results of these evolutionary advances were both beneficial and destructive. Abstract thinking was developing. Within a couple of thousand years, human beings began formulating ideologies, no longer moving around with a sense of oneness with the natural world. This separation led to a loss of that felt relationship with nature. Soon we would see the emergence of the world's religious traditions. The Abrahamic traditions noted stewardship of the land in their teachings. For example, the Judeo-Christian Bible notes, the earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord. That's Psalm 24:1. Good stewards take care of the gifts God has given them to manage. So what will be held accountable for? We have made stewards of the things of earth, such as money, tangible things, and even people. The Quran, chapter 7, verse 31, notes our responsibility to maintain the balance that Allah has created in this perfectly balanced world on the basis of sustainability and circularity. We are expected to act moderately, thoughtfully, and justly. The Vedic teachings of India advise, do not harm the environment, do not harm the water and the flora. Earth is my mother, I am her son. May the waters remain fresh, do not harm the waters. End of quote. Buddhism originated and developed in tropical forests. Thus, Buddhist teachings give rise to the ecological ethic with a strong concern for nature and the forest. They emphasize the importance of coexisting with nature rather than conquering it. The indigenous tribes, still found throughout remote areas of the planet, have never lost a felt sense of communion with nature. They can also help us to learn how to restore much of the land if we are willing to listen. I'll come back to this topic later, as first I'd like to address the perils and promises initiated by the dominant cultures. How many people actually pay attention to caretaking of our environment into their lives and practice? This attentiveness has been especially threatened by economic structures motivated and designed by greed, with no concern for the environment. Humans are continuously tempted through advertising to purchase more and more things, including the newest technologies, for instance, iPhone. Where do the elements come from that allow for these items? Copper is a critical element in building wind turbines and used for lithium-ion batteries. Mining depletes the natural world. Few people take the time to learn that Afghanistan has over $1 trillion of minerals in its soil. The need to assure these elements are available for our ever-growing technologies can also lead to wars. A friend once told me that much of what we create, hoping to help the planet, simply adds another problem. For example, mining copper for wind turbines, cobalt for rechargeable lithium-ion batteries, electronic devices, and electric cars has led to endangerment to children through labor practices, safety risks, and environmental abuses. We just keep mining and depleting the earth for increasing amounts of resources, despite the fact that the earth is evidencing extreme weather changes leading to a possible extinction event. We are rapidly approaching 8 billion people on this planet. Many of these near 8 billion people are uneducated and lack knowledge concerning the ways they impact the natural world. Some simply do not care. It simply has not entered their consciousness to do so. Others may be too stressed, given the daily foraging for food and water occurring in impoverished environments. Now, Costa Rica is famed for its rainforests and beauties. It has little rivers flowing through many neighborhoods. Yet when I was living there, I saw locals throwing large plastic bags filled with garbage into the little rivers. Once I was on a bus and saw a child open a window so she could throw away her empty soda bottle. I explained to her this is not good practice. Her mother was angry at me for speaking up. This is just one very minor example out of this growing 8 billion in approximately 195 nations. What is the percentage of people actually focusing on healing the environment by changing how we live? In the United States, the recent fossil fuel crisis initiated a lot of anger at the high cost of car gas. Of course, this is especially a problem for people who work for minimum pay, as simply driving to and from their place of employment is taking most of their pay. People panic. No one at any economic level appears to be willing to make conscious sacrifices. For example, pay more for fuel and drive less in order to quickly move away from fossil fuels. The real goal should have been, using this difficulty, to unite and make needed sacrifices for the good of our planet. Instead, the response in the U.S. was to dispense more fossil fuels and appease the discomfort. This was the time to quickly move toward creating safer forms of energy, but instead they found ways to lower the gas costs. There are people sounding the alarm concerning diminishing bee populations and how this impacts plant pollination and thus our food. An article by Dave Wilson examines major insects and pesticide problems, saying the cause of insect declines, I'm quoting here, are numerous, with habitat loss and the industrialization of global farming leading the way, assisted by growing use of pesticides, the depredations of invasive species, increasing light pollution, and more. Populations of many insects are now much reduced compared to the past, and most now exist in habitat islands, fragments of their favored habitat surrounded by inhospitable terrain. Sadly, climate change is likely to be the final straw for some. Of course, the climate has changed in the past many times, and insects have survived. Indeed, insects have come through all 5 of the previous mass extinction events on our planet, although many individual species must have been lost. However, this time is different. In the past, climate change was usually more gradual, and species could gradually shift their ranges in response, shifting toward the poles as the climate warmed and returning toward the equator as it cooled. Such movement used to be easy, but there were vast tracts of suitable habitat. Today, to move polewards, insects must somehow hop from one patch of habitat to the next, crossing roads, landscapes filled with polluting factories, arable fields sprayed with insecticides, housing estates, and other alien human-made landscapes. These illustrations show the divide between modern civilization and the natural world. Human beings are dependent upon land, sea, and air We cannot ignore the glaring signs of environmental catastrophes around us. But again, how many human beings care enough to make personal sacrifice? Worldwide, there are over 38,000 golf clubs utilizing water to keep the grasses green, while elsewhere people and other species are suffering from drought. There's a cable TV program that I like a whole lot called New Amsterdam. The program highlights significant issues and imbalances in its storylines. Last season, Max, the medical director, decided the hospital could change its practices to help environmental restoration. The script was written in a way to document the attitudes, refusals, and Max's dismay at the unwillingness of people to let go of the immense amount of hospital use and waste. For example, Max told them to wash their hands and not use all the plastic cups that they are using on a daily basis. He tried to change to healthier forms of lighting. He changed hospital dining menus to eliminate beef products, to reduce methane gas and the problem of clearing forests for raising farm animals. Everyone objected to every single move he made. The uproar was immense. Now, this was only one little TV show, but how many hospitals do we have on the planet that are using all these products? There are around 2,000 hospitals in 27 nations. This represents a lot of products being used and discarded. But how many people are willing to give up those items and lifestyles causing harm? This is a moral problem. It also asks for what I'm called flexibility of mind. You may have a belief in a related way of living that no longer meets the needs of the time. Can we hear what's needed? And are we willing to make cognitive and actualized changes? There are over 15 million restaurants worldwide. How many of them continue with single-use plastic? Straws, coffee stirrers, etc. These are not small things when you add them up. Do we take the time to point this out to the managers of those restaurants? I do. As noted earlier, indigenous people are more in touch with the natural world. The indigenous people of the world have been and continue to be the voices for our Mother Earth. For example, the Koji of Colombia, the Hopi, Lakota Sioux, and other First Nations people of the United States and Canada. The Achuara, the Ecuadorian Amazon, and other upper Amazonian tribes, Inuit of the Arctic region, the Dogon of Mali, the Zulu, Zangoma, and Kalahari San of Africa, the Kahuna of the Hawaiian Islands, the Maori of New Zealand, the Aborigines of Australia, the shamanic tribes in Siberia, and many other indigenous cultures around the world are still struggling to protect their sacred land from oil and natural gas companies that ongoingly rob Mother Earth of her lifeblood. Over 8,000 years ago, St. Francis of Assisi recognized all manifestations of life were interconnected. The Catholic Church proclaimed him to be patron saint for both animals and the natural environment. St. Francis considered the elements of air, earth, fire, and water as kin. He called trees, animals, and all species in nature brothers and sisters. If we can see all of nature as interconnected, our choices will have greater wisdom and be more compassionate. In summary, despite all the many efforts to restore health to land, air, and sea, it will not be successful unless humanity aligns itself with the natural world and also listens to the indigenous peoples of this planet. They know how to live in harmony with nature. For instance, wildfires have been a growing threat, but Native Americans have ways of working with forests to prevent such dangers. We need to listen. In closing, the Greenland shaman Angangag Sang notes, the time has come to unite our voices and our hearts, to walk our spiritual paths with practical feet, to restore the balance that's been missing on the earth. We cannot wait. Through our healing circles, we create experiences that empower us to live more compassionately, transforming our world one life at a time, melting the ice in the heart of humanity. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be able to present here.
Wow. What an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Very, very pertinent, especially your last comment, humanity must align with nature. I think the message you brought about disconnect between humanity and nature, and how some of the activity of the Anthropocene are influencing the planetary processes. It's very impressive, very pertinent. I salute you for your message. I have several questions, but I think first we should go to the floor and have audience questions for our very learned speaker. Yes.
Mention your name and country and go ahead. You have microphone? Okay.
I'm from New Mexico.
No, not you, Professor. Yeah, Professor
People
Mahal.
asking questions.
Yeah, the gentleman who asked questions.
They should give their name and the country and where they are.
Oh.
Thank you.
Please go ahead. The microphone is not working. Yeah. Can you come down
Thank you.
here?
Yes, we can hear.
Take this microphone. Come on. لا مش شغال. لا. Come along. We don't have time. Come.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
please. Please speak.
By the name Ajak, a South Sudanese in Faculty of Medicine, Alexander University. I would like to ask a question on this topic, and it's very nice presentation, and I appreciate you for that. Decision for environmental restoration is a human one. Now, I want you to comment on the issue that, because we always have leaders who always promise a lot of actions, but they don't do anything. And we have observed now in Pakistan is experiencing a lot of flooding or cyclone there. What can you add to decision makers like presidents, ministers in most of the countries who are experiencing these challenges? Because this is a human one, or is life and death. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Please, yes.
That's why I mentioned grassroots, because governments have all these procedures that take a long time to put in place. So the paperwork and the acting out and all the different elements, that we have to have grassroots engagement. We have to have people stepping up to the plate. I hope that I got it across in my talk that the most important thing is the unity of all. We have to come together and we have to recognize, how much water are we using? How are we handling at a very practical level? If everybody was doing that, think of the difference we could create. But in the meantime, these larger groups that are doing things to restore the oceans, to plant trees, to heal all the various things that are being destroyed, thank God for those people, but it's not enough. More people need to join in. And again, that's grassroots. I hope that answers your comment and question.
So is another one, please?
Yes.
You would like to ask a question? No, you yourself. Okay. Any other question from this side? مش حد متشجع كده منكم؟ دكتور عبد الغني، صوت سينا، انت راجل بتمثل جامعة. Okay. Fine. I think it's there is no other question from now because. Well,
maybe I can ask one last question. Each one of the 8 billion people that you mentioned, current population, is really a culprit and a victim. So as one of the very learned member of those 8 billion, what sacrifice would you make to make planet a better place?
I've made a few. I think I need to meet a lot more. So I have, this may sound strange, but, you know, I think people wash their laundry more than they need to wash their laundry, and their sheets and towels more than they need. So I made a decision that I would not do that. I can wear my clothes more than once. I can wear them 2 or 3 times. I can use a towel several times. I can do all the things that diminish water. Then I look at how do I handle plastics, because it seems almost impossible to avoid getting them. And we have a very good recycling service here in Silver City that requires us to hand carry or drive down our plastics and get out of our car and hand them in and give a $5 contribution. So there are little things, you know, again, how I use products is very important. I dropped my beautiful rice cooker and it has a dent. I looked at it and thought, I'm not going to replace it. It still works. I don't care if it doesn't look beautiful. That's another little tiny sacrifice I can make. Looking at these little things before us.
Carbon footprint of average American is 15 metric ton per person per year. The world average is 4. Some of the countries in the world have a carbon footprint of 100 kilos. How would you reduce the carbon footprint of average American?
Well, I think the main thing, and here I'm somewhat of a culprit in terms of I do drive a car. And I think that one of the things that we really need to do is look how we use energy. That's a real crucial thing because it's using up all the resources from the planet. And that's, I think, really major.
Thank you. I think this has been a very high-quality presentation. Please join me in thanking her for making a great, and hopefully we'll come back to you in our discussion for the end of the session. So please stay around. Our next speaker, I think she has been waiting for a while, LRFA, and she...
Dina Mariam first. Dr. Honorable Dina Mariam, she's now on the screen.
Oh, she's now on the line? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I've already introduced her. Dina, I gave an introduction. Should I do it again? I was very
no.
With your credentials.
You don't have to introduce me to myself. I know.
The Vedic culture and your guru. So please, we would like to hear, especially something relevant to your book, The Untold Story of Sita, and many, many other excellent ideas. So the floor is yours for half an hour total, 20 minutes and maybe 10 minutes discussion.
Thank you. And I thank you for the organizers for inviting me to be part of this. And I apologize for the delay. I actually was a little bit confused about the time sitting here in New York, but it all worked out. So here I am. I want to begin with a story. For years, my organization, the Global Peace Initiative of Women, has been bringing a delegation of spiritual teachers to the UN climate conferences annually to speak about the inner dimensions of climate change, the spiritual aspects of this crisis, ecological crisis. So a few years ago, until COVID, when we haven't been doing that since COVID, but a year or so before COVID, there was the UN COP meeting in Poland, and we were en route to go. But before that, we had an interfaith meeting in Japan that we had to attend to look at the way the different faith communities were responding to the climate crisis. So I was in Japan, and one of the delegates, who was actually the climate negotiator for the Dominican Republic, but also a real lover of whales, and took people out to listen to the whale song, spent a whole session talking about the intelligence and communication skills of the whales. And he played their songs, which were haunted. And then he played one that was set to the background of the singer Joan Baez, the folk singer. And it was a duet between the whale and Joan Baez. I have to tell you, it was haunting. So I learned a lot. I have to admit, I never thought much of the whales before that. I mean, I knew there were whales, but I didn't feel a personal connection with them. Came back to New York briefly, and then we were en route to Poland for the conference. On the way to Poland, I had a vision dream. One of those dreams that is so real and made such an impact on me. In the dream, I was standing in my apartment in New York City, which overlooks the East River. And as I was looking out over the river, this large whale swims up the river, stops in front of my apartment, looks up directly at me, and we make this contact. And I said to the whale, "I hear you." And then I look up, and the stream stayed with me. I said to myself, I think I just agreed to represent the whales at the UN Climate Conference. I went to the conference. I went to every session that was there on seas. Not one session mentioned animals at sea. So in the process of this, I used to describe my work as interfaith. We changed that. We don't do interfaith. Our work is interspecies now because it's incumbent on us to recognize and connect with all the life forms on Earth. So one of the sessions I went to, which was on concern of the seas, dealt mostly with tourist assets. What were these countries going to do who depended on the seas for tourism? And I thought to myself, just because we can't see them, does it mean we're going to negate them? They don't exist because we don't see them? A year ago, last summer, there was a heat wave over the Northwest in the U.S. About 100 people died. It was a tragedy. It was something to really take note of. But experts say 1 billion sea animals died because the waters were a little bit warmer, just a teeny bit warmer. 1 billion. We lost 1 billion sea animals in a few days. And yet it hardly shook our consciousness. The floods in Pakistan, a terrible thing. Over 1,000 people have died. Over 1 million, at least over 1 million animals have died. So in the process of this, I say to myself, are we such a narcissistic species that we can't see beyond ourselves? We don't understand interconnection. We use that word all the time. But if we truly understood interconnection, we would know that what happens to them is happening to us. We are connected. We are part of them. They're not separate from us. The biggest human illusion is this idea of separation. And it came during this time of evolution where we had a more collective intelligence at a certain point, and then individualism developed and developed and developed and developed until we reached the point today where we're completely cut off from everything else. And we only care about ourselves and the impact it's going to have on us. So I thought a lot about how to change this. And I say to young people, because we do a lot of work with young people who are very concerned about their future. And I say to them, fall in love with the earth again. Fall in love. That's what's needed. Fall in love with the trees. Fall in love with the birds. Fall in love with the animals. One of the blessings, and there are hidden blessings to this COVID epidemic, despite the tragedies, is that we all had to stop and pause and look around and be home. And the question asked of Sharon of what we can do, remote work is one of the answers that is looming in front of us. We don't have to go anywhere to do our work. Thankfully, Zoom came just at the time that COVID hit. So whereas previously I would have to get on a plane and fly to be with you, now I can be with you without leaving my library. And so while I've been home, hardly leaving these last 2.5 years, I'm much more aware of the birds that live with me. I live upstate New York, an hour or so outside of the city. I'm much more aware of the animal life. I'm aware of what's happening. We're in a drought right now. I'm not only thinking of the impact on human, what about the animals? They need to drink too. Where are the animals going to get the water? We can have mass die-off of animals. If we have mass die-offs, and not just of animals, trees too. I've lost a lot of trees, bushes in this drought. We are going to suffer. And until we understand that what happens out there affects us, we're not separate from it. We're not going to be able to take the steps needed. So I think one of the shifts in consciousness is to truly, on a deep level, live this reality of interdependence, not just see it as a concept, but understand it as a living reality. We have to be more connected, which means we have to take time to spend with all the life forms around us, the trees, the plant life, the animal life. Now I want to talk a little bit about agriculture, because agriculture actually, ironically, has been a big part of our work at GPAW. And the reason for that is about 20 years ago, I was invited to Japan by a Shinto-based group called Shime. They were interested in interfaith work, and so they reached out to me. And later they were interested in gaining ECOSOC status at the UN, which they did. And they've joined us in various programs. They've been participating in the climate change COP meetings. Their focus is agriculture. For a spiritual organization, it's rare. They see as part of their spiritual practice the interaction, the growing of food, the work with the soil, and they pay a lot of attention to soil. Soil is a big part of their spiritual life. Enriching the soil, they use no inputs at all, not even organic inputs. So they've done a lot of research in this area, and they had a collaboration with scientists at the University of California, I think it was Davis. And one of the experience was to take conventional agriculture using pesticides, organic agriculture using limited inputs, not harmful inputs, and then natural agriculture, which uses nothing but whatever leaves that fall down or whatever's there. And they showed that the root systems were strongest on those plants grown through natural agriculture with no inputs. The second strongest were the organic ones, and the weakest root systems were the conventionally grown foods. That's their immune system. It's the same, it's a parallel to what we've done with antibiotics. The more antibiotics we throw into ourselves, the less effective they are. Until now, we've reached a crisis with antibiotics where they're not working anymore in many cases. The same thing with the pesticides. You have to keep putting more and more and more. And there's a crisis with the soil. There was an article recently by a small farmer in Iowa who said Iowa used to have the richest soil in the nation. The soil is completely degraded because of industrial agriculture. How are we going to live without soil? And you see it in the fact that Americans, I don't know about other parts of the world, have an obesity crisis. Half of our country is obese because the quality of the food is so degraded. I read one time you have to eat 10 apples today to get the minerals and vitamins that one apple used to provide. So the degradation of our food, the loss of biodiversity in our food system, there used to be tens of thousands of varieties of rice. The ancient cultures knew how to have complete diets based on what was available. I think we have the wrong notion of what life was like before agriculture. There was plenty of wild foods that provided all of the needs available. But as the human community spread, those foods were diminished. We lost the connection with the earth and the maintain the natural cycles until agriculture came in. And now we've moved to the point where we're losing small farmers, and now we'll be left with industrial agriculture. There's another article not long ago about one of our dairy centers in Wisconsin that the dairy farming has become so industrialized that small dairy farmers can no longer exist. They can't support themselves. A small dairy farmer may have a few thousand cows, or even a few hundred, a few thousand, but how can that compete with an industrial farm of 15,000 cows that controls the whole thing from the cow to the meat? And so the industrial farming is destroying our food system. So how do we turn that around? It's not only depleting the soil, it's also using up our water, underground water. So what are we going to do without water and good soil? Now they're talking about growing plants inside, just in water, without soil, without realizing the benefits that soil provides, the minerals that soil provides to foods. There are all these microorganisms in the soil that enhance the nutritional So what are the consciousness changes? I know Ali's going to get into that in the next session, but we can't talk about climate change. And this has been one of my frustrations in going to the UN climate conferences. Yes, you have to deal with the outer changes we have to make, which is a very complex. How do you change the whole economy, global economy? I have no illusion that this is a simple fix and that it can be done with a few things. I mean, we know we have to change our energy systems. We know we have to change the way we live in terms of how we use our energy. We know we have to move away or reduce our dependence on meat and move more to a plant-based diet. Doesn't mean you can't have meat, but maybe you have it more consciously and more. In ancient times, even in 200 years ago, people didn't have meat 3 times a day. It was saved for a holiday or for the Sabbath. It was a special occasion to have meat. And yet we've grown into a world where we think we can have whatever we want, whenever we want it. Also, moving more toward local farmers, which is beginning in certain pockets in the U.S., small local farmers. And I know that there are certain places like India where 60% of the country are farmers. I mean, America's lost so many farms. And I pray that those places don't follow the U.S. model and move to industrial farming. Before it's too late, maintain your local farming population and begin to move or to use more consciously. I don't think it's like if you're a drug addict, you just can't stop one day and say, I'm never going to take it again. I'm never going to take a drink of alcohol. Maybe that is the way you do it for those things. But there has to be a gradual transition. But we need leadership to get out these messages, to tell people, to show people that sacrifice is actually for their benefit. It's not something you do grudgingly. You're actually providing benefit to yourself and to the world through sacrifice. Sacrifice, the concept, is intrinsic in all religions. And yet we think of it as a negative, but it's actually positive because you're giving it the lesser for the greater. And there's always benefit that comes anytime you make a sacrifice. People notice when they engage in fast, which is a spiritual practice, there's tremendous benefit that comes from that. Anytime you give up something, you're strengthening your character, you're strengthening your will, you're receiving personal benefit from such things. And you're contributing to the greater whole. So in talking about the consciousness shifts we need to make, which I know Ali will expand upon it, and I'll sort of close with this so we can have some time for questions and discussions. I think experiencing a personal connection with the natural world is key. It used to be part of our life for everybody because we lived with nature. And the movement into the cities has made it harder and harder to connect. And the degradation of the environment. I mean, where do you have to go to find a beautiful spot? And so where it's easier to connect. I mean, you can connect with a plant. You don't have to really go anywhere. Connect with just not from leaving your home. But it is helpful to go and surround yourself. I always found forests to be very healing for me. Why do people like to take a walk in the forest? Or why do people like to sit by the ocean? It's healing. And I've also heard that the vibrations coming from the earth are healing. So walking barefoot on the earth, sitting on the earth, has a way of healing and helping one come out of oneself, to move, to evolve beyond this narcissistic worldview, this extreme individualism that has evolved is essential. And to evolve toward a more collective view that we are part of a whole. I mean, just like with your body, you have to think of your body as a whole system, not as just individual parts that are unconnected. So to move toward the consciousness of the whole and to realize that what we do affects the whole, even a minor thing, like washing your clothes less often, as Sharon said, anything you do affects the vibration of the whole, the collective. And so being more conscious of how we can affect that collective, I think is a calling to all of us now. It could be small steps. I mean, mountains are moved with innumerable small steps. And I think one of the hardest things that we try to convey to young people as that what they do makes a difference, because it can be overwhelming. When you look at the crises that are hitting us from all sides, and when I first started going to the climate conferences in 2008, it was future, future, future. It's going to happen at some point. It's no longer future. It's now. We put it off and put it off and put it off. And I remember after the Katrina hit the U.S., I was sitting with someone from the UN, and he said to me, "I'm very sorry to say, but maybe the U.S. needs a few more Katrinas to wake up." And so we've had a few more disasters. And I don't think everybody needs to wake up. There's that 100th monkey phenomenon. If 100 monkeys gain a certain skill, it runs for the whole species. If enough people become conscious and make these evolutionary adjustments in our consciousness, it could spread through the whole species. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at an evolutionary move, moving out of extreme individualism into more a collective, awakening our love again for the natural world. Because when you love something, you don't harm it. You don't neglect it. You don't disregard it. Since I had that dream of the whales have not been out of my consciousness. A connection, bonds. And I think of them. And I send, one of the things about the whales is they communicate by thought. There's a certain time of year where whales all over gather in this place in the Dominican Republic, and together they put their nose down to the earth and they sing. They sing their haunting song to the earth. And yet they're communicating through some means with each other that they gather there. So it is possible to communicate with other species. And I think the heart is the way to sending out loving relations to these other species and knowing that we're with them. We don't want to see harm come to them. We don't want to be perpetuators of harm. And yet we're turning around a huge ship, and we have to have compassion and patience with our efforts. I think having compassion on ourselves as a human community that is struggling to awaken and is struggling to make the changes, and hopefully we'll have the intelligence and the breakthrough. If we put our collective energy into coming up with solutions instead of fighting over territory and whatnot, we'd arrive there much quicker. So that's my hope that we can put together our collective intelligence so we can come up with these solutions and that we can fall in love with our earth. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Dana Meyer, what a presentation. Excellent. And I think you and Sharon together really made tremendous contribution to the duties and our connection with nature, how to bring it back. I just happened to publish an article in Journal of Soil and Water Conservation, and it is on bringing peace to the world. And then the next sentence is through Vasudeva Kutumbakam. The world is one family. I think you said it much better than my article says it. But I noticed that if everybody thought that we are one family, 8 billion people, and everybody is either uncle or aunt or cousin, brother and sister, we will treat everybody differently. And we'll treat them with respect and dignity. I think you also brought the question of soil degradation. You brought the issue of what the soil are in Iowa. You brought up the question whether soil are living entity and whether we can hear the soil, whether we can speak to soil. I think that brings with the question our alphabet book, ABC, or alphabet A, and so forth, or Ka, why they can't be environment oriented so that children learn from the very beginning. Why can't we have a Little Prince book which is environment based, which is based on soil ethics and so on. Excellent. So questions from the audience, please.
في أي أسئلة؟ الناحية دي كده ما فيهاش أي أسئلة؟ إزاي بس؟ أوكي. يعني في تعليم الأطفال مثلا إزاي نغير مناهج التعليم عشان يحسوا بالطبيعة ويحسوا باللي حواليهم من الأول يعني. هل حد معترض على الحكاية دي؟ طب لو كنتوا موافقين ما قولوا رأيكم بس. حد يقول رأي. محدش عايز طالما موافقين you accept. أنا عايز أسمع منهم يا بروفيسور. دول الشباب ها؟ Okay, I'm sorry speaking Arabic. I'm trying to activate. I mean, these colleagues, they didn't have coffee breaks or lunch. They are continuing. And therefore, I'm trying. It's not only drought. I have hunger as well.
Dr. Al-Baltagi, I will ask question to Diana in the meantime while others are thinking about it. In your book, the book was Untold Story of Sita. Can you give one message? Are you talking about Sita of the Ramayana and how she was treated? Are you talking about the present day Sita that they are not getting the respect that they should?
Actually, you had asked me to talk about that book, and so I will say a few words about it now. I'm talking about the Sita of the Ramayana, the untold story of her, because the end part of the Ramayana was added much, much later. And scholars know this, but don't take this into consideration. The meter is different. It was known that it was added later. And so there's a misperception of her role in the unfolding of the story. It came about, I mean, this story took place many thousands of years BCE, and before the patriarchal era. And in the succeeding centuries and millennia, as women sort of took a backseat role in society, the story got shaded. But during her time, which was several thousands of years BCE, women played a prominent role in society. There were women rishis, women sages. And she herself was an enlightened being and was an active part in that whole story that unfolded, which was was a time of the spreading of agriculture, actually. Her father, Janak Baba, was one of the pioneers of early agriculture. And it was a time of society's development where cities were beginning to develop. It was a time before when individuation was just emerging. And there was much more of a collective consciousness, much more of an integration into nature. But that was changing. And as societies developed and agriculture developed, the separation from nature was beginning. And she saw this. And one of the messages that she tried to implant, and in writing that book, it was like she was speaking to me directly, was this love for the earth and the treating of all animals as our kin, as our children. And you see in the book, she communicates with the plants. She knows how to read the plants, the medicinal plants, the animals she cares for. It's not just the human family. It's the life family, the family of communities of life. And so I think there needed to be a retelling of that story, just like I think all the stories need to be retold. The story of Adam and Eve needs to be retold. How do we know it was Eve who took the apple? Maybe it was Adam. We need to rethink these stories that have come down to us and realize that they've been shaded by a certain mindset, which we now hopefully are outgrowing.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to what you just said. The name Sita, and sometimes called Sia, she was born when her father Janak was plowing to break the drought. People forget that basis. And when Pandits asked what should this baby be named, and Pandits suggested her name is Sita, Sia in Sanskrit, which means full. And therefore the connection with Mother Earth. And that's a very important message. And also, of course, the treatment at the end on how she had to leave home, what was part of it. So that was the But I want you to understand that Sita was born from Mother Earth. And her name, Sia, means furrow, therefore human. That's where Gandhi said, we should never forget how to dig earth. Forgetting digging earth, how to use it, is forgetting ourselves. And that's exactly what the story of Sia is.
I mean, here you have King Janak, the king of the king, and he is plowing the soil.
Yeah.
He's plowing to break
He's
the drought.
plowing the soil. Because that connection with the earth is essential for each one of us.
Exactly.
We learn a lot. I mean, this student organization that I mentioned earlier, their motto was, nature teaches us everything.
Yeah.
Are there questions from the floor now?
Yes, Professor Lal, if you can allow me 2 minutes, I'll just speak in another language.
Yes,
It's Arabic. Yes. يعني شوفوا يا جماعة انتوا يعني احنا اللي بيتكلموا عليه ده يعني محبة طبيعة يعني احنا عندنا مش انا بتكلم مثلا في الاسلام هم خلق مثلكم يعني النمل النحل النبات دي كلها كائنات ربنا هو اللي خلقها لازم نحافظ عليها المية اللي بنشربها دي لازم نحافظ عليها واحنا مسؤولين عن هذا يعني في مسؤولية يعني مثلا معاملة الحيوانات في حد مثلا دخل الجنة عشان رعى قطة أو كلب أو أي كائن فإحنا لازم ناخد عظة وعبرة من التراث بتاعنا سواء كان إسلامي لو كان في إخوة من الأباط يشوفوا التراث بتاعهم أيضا الكلام ده مش كلام مرسل اللي هم بيتكلموا فيه ده كلام حقيقي وموجود عندنا يعني لازم الإحساس ده يبقى موجود لأن مثلا مملكة النمل والنحل وكل القصص دي عظة وعبرة إن في حكمة من خلقهم وهم لهم قانونهم اللي موجود وبيتعاملوا مع بعض إزاي دي عملية للتأمل بعيدا لكن إيه اللي يهمنا في القصة دي كلها إن إحنا نتوائم مع الطبيعة باحترام وبتفهم وما نبقاش قاسيين لا على نفسنا ولا على ما حولنا عشان كده مثلا في الحج ما تقدرش حتى تقتل حاجه ولا اي كائن ده محرم انا بس بدي رساله سريعه عشان تعرفوا ان اللي بتقوله مريم والبروفيسور لا مش بعيد عننا ابدا كون ان احنا عندنا فهم كل واحد يبقى ممكن عنده فهم مختلف لكن لازم يبقى فيه توحيد في الفهم في وجودنا كبني ادمين على الارض دي بنعمل ايه ورايحين فين وجايين منين فهتوقف هنا بس نرجع لهم تاني Professor Lal please I ended up my 2 minutes.
Thank you. No, that was very nice of you. I do want to take a couple of minutes before we go to the next speaker, but first of all, let's thank Diana Mariam for an excellent presentation.
Thank you, Dina.
But I do want to be a little bit selfish here to interject. The two speakers who just presented, I think to do justice to what they have said, I want to share a few thoughts. One is Khalil Gibran. Many of you know who he was. He said, trees are rubaiyat, poem that earth writes upon the sky. We fell them down and then turned them into paper so that we may record our emptiness. That was Khalil Gibran. In Islam, I don't need to remind Professor Baltagi, where in Surah Al-Rahman, verse 14, he created the man of clay like the potters. And then Quran 25:54, we made from water every living thing. That Prophet Muhammad himself said, do not overuse water even if you are on a running river. That he preaches us the value of water. Then the Greek philosophy of the Romans, the earth goddess Tellus, was related to the goddess of fertility and harvest, Ceres. That's a part of Roman culture. The Greek goddess of earth, Gaia. Some of you know the Gaia hypothesis by Jim Lovelock. And he named the Themis, goddess of law, and her descendant, Demetra, that many of you know, or the name, the method. In Christianity, the word Adam, which is actually a Hebrew word, is derived from the Hebrew word Adama, meaning the earth, the soil. The human is made of soil, the earth. Then in Sikhism, Pawn Guru, Pani Pita, Mata Dharta Maha. Guru is wind, water is father, Mother Earth is the greatest. This is Gurbani. In Hinduism, that Dana is much more familiar than I am, Upanishad says very precisely, human body is made of Shati, Jal, Pavak, Gagan, Samira. Panch Tatra Adam Sharira. Human body is made of soil, water, air, energy, and space. Do not ever degrade them. Yeah. And then it says, if the diet is good, medicine is of no need. When diet is poor, medicine is of no use. And that is proper, very well say to connection how agriculture is related to human. The word homo in Latin means humus, the soil organic matter, which is a sense of all life. The problem is humanity has forgotten its roots. Yeah. We need to connect the humanity with nature. And these two speakers brought up that message very, very nicely.
Thank you.
I want to take your permission, Dr. Baltagi, to go to the last speaker of this session, Elia Rafia from the Women College and Shaman. Yes, and she chair of the foundation, and founder of the Human Foundation System of the Egypt. She makes use of anthropological perspectives for understanding issues related to religion, politics, and culture. And we have been talking about that this afternoon. And she edited many books published in India, Jordan, Morocco, Canada, and USA. And please, the floor is yours for next half an hour. We would like to hear you speak the need for a shift of consciousness in dealing with climate change. Thank you for your presentation. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, Professor Lal. And Assalamu alaikum. May peace prevail on earth. I would like first to express that I am very humbled to be in this forum and with all these giant scientists, which I attended, and I at many of their presentations, and I salute their efforts to do something for climate change. And also I would like to express my dear love and appreciation to my dear friends, Gina Miriam and Sharon Harris. We had a long journey together. Maybe I knew now Gina for more than 10 years since the revolution, the Egyptian revolution, and I know Sharon even before that in the 90s or even in the 80s, and we have common works together. Now I would like just to say that my presentation is for what the need of shift of consciousness. Actually, my previous presenters they dealt with this kind of consciousness that we need. But let me proceed of how I reached the conclusion that actually they presented and they said. First of all, we have to acknowledge that we are in a chaotic time and in complete blindness. We swim in the darkness and do not know our direction and where we're heading. Maybe something happens to bring the sun forth, to make us see and find our common goods. Maybe. Perhaps we realize that we must come together to do miraculous work that will last for future generations. Maybe. To save the earth from fateful annihilation, we must transcend our ego and be conscious of belonging to the human family and the cosmos. This is my point to start. And my wonder is, that we know about the climate crisis. The last decade have witnessed growing interest in facing the destructive prospects of climate change. Loss of biodiversity, deforestation, and increasing poverty are threatening livelihood sustainability. The mainstream scientific methodology is often poorly equipped to deal with these challenges. Something is missing, and we must find it. Ecosystem degradation comprises the well-being of over 3 billion people, and a growing tide of pollution and waste costs some 9 million lives annually, according to the Secretary General of the United Nations. And there is science, and science suggests many solutions. Yes, science enlightens our way, but it is not enough to work. Scientists, for example, as we heard in these forums, and this part of what I'm saying is just part of what can be a summary of certain main issue. Scientists suggested that the approach to integrating resources management must be customized to different ecosystems to meet the need of communities. This approach requires developing intense knowledge and understanding of the coping mechanisms to deal with drought risk, managing and restoring ecological function, sustainably harvesting biodiversity, and diversifying production system and livelihood. This technological understanding must be shared globally, regionally, and nationally, and be adapted accordingly. But why we are not reaching the vulnerable community? For scientific solution to reach vulnerable community, they need to support the national policy. They need the support of the national policy. National policies respond to common social value, which is not necessarily in harmony with the international policies. When the standard value system focuses on immediate short-term interests and overlooks the impact of climate change in the long term, vulnerable communities remain at risk. I think we have a very famous case that we have really we remember when we heard Trump saying there is no such a thing as climate change. And he was really appealing to the business, the industry, and so on for his own political gains. Many other leaders, they are not as blunt, but also they are not taking the serious action for the same reason. So, where are we heading to? For 50 years, since the first global conference for the environment in Stockholm, 30 years since the first conference on climate change in Rio de Janeiro, and 7 years since the Paris Agreement, world is still scrambling to find the right path to face the challenging crisis of climate change. At COP27 this year, which are going to be held in November in Egypt, countries involved will review and renew nationally determined contribution concerning Paris Agreement. They will not wait 5 years from Glasgow COP26. The world needs this urgent commitment. What do we expect? Are we optimistic? The Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, IDDC, report this year, 2022, the report states that the Paris Agreement and the CDGs have come to provide direction for coordinating, financing, and assessing global progress in climate change adaptation action. It focuses on transformation and system transition in energy, land, ocean, coastal and freshwater ecosystem, urban, rural, and infrastructure, and industry and society. What we would expect. Very promising. It sounds very promising. From COP26 to COP27, under the Paris Agreement, 195 countries set a target to keep average global temperature change below 2 degrees Celsius, based on announcement made during COP26. Experts estimate that we are on a path of 2.4 degrees Celsius warming. Parties agree to revisit their commitment as necessary by the end of 2022 to put us on track to 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, maintaining the upper end of conditions under the Paris Agreement. COP27 is a continuation of the Paris Pledge to hold on the national determined contribution. What do we expect? We don't expect anything to happen. Why is the pattern dealing with climate change is not likely to take another break? I have my reason. First of all, the complexities of interconnectedness between the national and the global economy within the global and regional power struggles hinder the efficiency of effort of facing the climate change. We very obvious, Ukraine and Russia conflict now. How are we going to realize any of these conditions with this conflict which is going to continue? In Stockholm, June this year, Secretary General of the United Nations warned today global well-being is in jeopardy, in large because we have not kept our promises on the environment. Globalization created a universal culture that encouraged consumerism, greed, selfishness, and individualism. Those who dominate the global economy think of their short-term interests and are not likely to pay attention to share seriously in realizing CDGs as intertwined with climate change. The cultural values and worldview worldwide are blind to seeing the climate change crisis. People in developed countries are victims of inherited value system that cut them from their interconnectedness to nature. So what we're going to do, we have to come back to nature. We have to let nature educate us. We have to learn from nature to cut across the gap between plans and action. Let me tell you how. Organisms are open systems. They cannot survive without continuously exchanging matter and energy with their environment. The mutual interaction of the component system, in a way, glue these components together into whole. Even though we may not be aware of our interconnection, with our conscious, we are part of the whole system, and spiritually. But being conscious of our interconnectedness brings another value system to focus, perceiving the cosmos. Perceiving the cosmos as interrelated and interconnected systems ad infinitum removes the delusion of separateness. Everything is connected to everything, and it is magnificent to realize that human can apprehend this interconnected. This is only possible because human consciousness is an extension of the universe consciousness. I'd like to read this statement again. That is, our human consciousness is an extension of the universe consciousness. This awareness will shift the attention from individualistic perception to empathetic attitude. Taking the organismic approach to our consciousness means that we perceive the universe as a live entity with a self-generating problem. With quantum mechanics theory, we are in a stage of transition. John von Neumann reformulated quantum theory as a theory of an evolving objective universe interacting with human consciousness. Depth psychology also relates between our psyche and the physical realm. Depth psychology expresses this relationship between the psyche and the physical realm through what the Swiss psychologist Carl Gustav Jung called archetypes. The archetypes are related to the collective unconsciousness that relate human to human and natural world. Nature inspired science through unconscious. This was true to Watson and DNA and Wolfgang Pauli, the Nobel Prize winner. Oneness of life and oneness of humanity enlightened our past to face the crisis of our time. Quantum mechanics and depth psychology reveal our oneness on the unconscious level and our mutual interaction with nature. Nature may inspire us for knowledge that would heal our agony, whether we know it or not. A sincere drive to serve our planet leads us to solutions that may surprise us. That is what we call innovation. It is an inspiration coming from the universe, the unknown part within us that is connected, this part within us is connected to the whole. Cultivating our heart, we have to cultivate our heart with the same way we cultivate the land. International agreement, research institutions, and scientific accomplishment have not realized their objective. They are interrupted by pandemics, conflict, regional wars, and lust for domination and hegemony. There must be a parallel plan for paradigm shift of consciousness. We need to cultivate our heart with love and empathy by opening to this interconnection. Now, I avoided actually any religious term, but I think that all religions, as you mentioned, and as you quote, they emphasize this kind of interconnectedness. Also, the indigenous knowledge emphasize this interconnectedness. I am here speaking from Ain Shams University, the eye of the sun, the eye of the sun. And that is pharaonic expression. And from this land, history started. It started by this connection of human being to the whole. And I hope that Egypt will retain its message to the whole world. And I'm optimistic that maybe building the COP27 in this land, maybe do something. Maybe that the Egypt land will inspire the FNG to do real and serious things about our crisis. Now, if I move from the holistic comprehensive picture to local implementation, coming back to the CDG, I would just stress the CDGs are the core and the heart of facing the climate change crisis. According to IDDC report of 2020, adaptation is linked closely to CDG. Adaptation as a broad concept is reduce risk and vulnerability to climate change, strengthen resilience, enhance well-being, and anticipate and respond successfully to change. Now, reducing climate change risk requires immediate and long-term adaptation efforts. Civil society must support the governmental efforts to bring national plans to serve the livelihood of vulnerable communities. Here, I would like to mention the message of the Human Foundation. The Human Foundation envisions a world where every person has equal opportunity to bring forth their human potential, to contribute to the human and natural environment, realizing prosperity, stability, and peace. The HF mission focuses on fostering human values that cherish freedom, maintain equality and justice, respect the diversity, cultivate gender balance, and secure human rights through knowledge, science, and people-centered sustainable development. The HF and the IFT projects care most about supporting human beings to take an inner journey to know who they are, and renew the meaning of life continuously. The activities of the HF support people to uncover the innate connection with the impersonal aspect of life, meaning that they discover the interconnection with the whole. And the scope of the work in the HF is very wide, disseminating cultural value, which is support in initiative in the field of human development, fostering research in areas that serve the foundation mission, using multi and interdisciplinary approaches with collaboration with academic institutions, capacity building program by intent realization, science, art, and management. The HF is committed to contribute to the climate change. The Human Foundation is committed to contributing to climate change in collaboration with IDDC, aiming at increasing awareness with action to sustain human values, to preserve the natural resources for human future. The HF bases activities on serving the grassroots, cutting across different social strata, and serving the prosperity and dignity of all. And here I would like to give a message to the COP27. I'd like to tell them the world needs to put clashes aside to face climate change as a significant threat to life on Earth. Let us raise global awareness that we are part of each other. Let this be the base of a new dawn of civilization. Let us be one family, working together for the betterment of all, and let nature inspire us to heal learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation, very comprehensive, very strong message, what should be achieved and obtained at COP27. I think this third presentation, along with the other two, were on the same topic of interconnectivity and how to bring humanity closer to nature. Thank you so much. I think there must be some question. I see Dr. Ismail Saragabin. Maybe welcome to you, sir. I'm glad to see you here. We're glad to see you participating in good health. So you may have some question to begin with.
No, I really have a comment on, especially the last presentation.
Sure.
Dr. Alia, fundamentally what I would like to do is that part of that problems have been set up. Yeah. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, hi. So I was saying that following up on Dr. Alia's presentation of interconnectedness, one of the fundamental problems that we have, and I think this deserves a separate seminar at some other time, is the fact that the fundamental measures of economic activity, which we all know, GDP, is disconnected from not just from nature, so that a forest standing up counts for zero, a forest being cut down makes a positive contribution to GDP. It is also disconnected from people to the point where you do not measure welfare, and not only that, but unremunerated work of mothers taking care of children and so on is not counted in any of that. So we need to really amend that to the point where we can have the equivalent of, like if you have a private corporation, you cannot sell assets and count them as revenue. That's illegal. But governments do this all the time in GDP calculations. They sell off their assets and count them as revenue. So we need to have a capital account system that brings in these capital, meaning not just the produced capital of buildings, equipment, and so on, produced assets, but also human capital. That is education, health, nutrition. Human capital is what's embedded in me and which I take with me when I travel. And social capital, which holds the country together and enables it to function and to have laws and to have systems. And most importantly, of course, natural capital, which has environmental services as well as action. That interconnectedness was put out by economists by counting them and have made.
We are losing your voice here, Dr. Ismail. When you move to the capital, can you repeat this last two sentences? Because we didn't hear them.
Okay. We need bring not just the flow measure of income, which is what gross GDP is about. We need to bring in capital, stocks of capital. Yes, produced assets, buildings, equipment, and so on, that's stock of capital. But so is natural capital, both in terms of environmental services produced as well as the interconnectedness that Dr. was talking about. And then human capital, which is the investment to make in people in terms of education, health, and nutrition, which is embedded in a person, so that when they migrate, they take it with them. But social capital, which holds things together, allows us to fight. Work was done on that about 20 years ago. It is still being done right now. But it was the biodiversity report that he and I did the report before. And right now we have a global commission of water, which is trying to look at the hydrological cycle and how to bring that into our understanding of a circular things can come together. So there is now a beginning of an effort, even in post, to bring in these dimensions that I think Dr. Alia and colleagues were talking. I hope that one day Dr. Adel will recognize Ngratan, he will organize a conference with some of the top thinking economists. I emphasize thinking economists, not all economists, but thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ismail Saragaldin. Those excellent comments on different types of capital, human, nature, social, and interconnectivity in view of the presentation by Dr. Alia Lakia.
I'd like just to stress the point that Dr. Ismail is saying about the human capital. That is the capital that I'm taking it with me. This is how I see myself, how I connect to the world and to the social world, to the natural world and the social world. And I think this should be really interrelated, because when we are connected to ourselves first, and then we can connect to we connect to the whole, and we connect to the social environment, then we are human beings that can be really active in our environment, social environment, and natural environment. And I think this is a very important and very relevant point to what we are dealing with.
Thank you, especially in relation to human capital. Professor Baltagi, any comments from the floor? Questions?
Yeah, Professor Abu Hadid, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Alia, for the wonderful talk, which we enjoyed, and it actually creates some new ideas. It is clear, actually, that climate change is linked to economical benefits of the superpowers, and that several claims we hear from the third world on the and never have been materialized in this respect. How to shift consciousness in dealing with climate change in a world governed by financial benefits and materialized? A world that the strong create wars to trade the lives of people for the gain of dollar. I think it is very difficult, or in other words, is it possible?
Okay. Lawal, let me tell you that I am holding a vision. And a vision which I think it is valid as a vision. But at the same time, in order to turn a vision to be practiced on the real ground, then I have, first of all, to apply this vision on me. And second, to plant the seed around me. It's like we are bringing or doing or having another land. It's like I am really starting, initiating something. Yes, maybe it's not. It's very difficult to deal with on the level of political scenarios, economic benefits, and all these kind of things. But because I believe in the power of the unconscious, the power of the spirit, so I feel like if we have like a nucleus group, and I am sure nucleus group, it's not just my group here in Egypt, but the nucleus group that I met with my friends like the Global Peace Initiative of Women, and I met Sharon Harris and many other people around the world. They believe and they really apply what they believe in. And then, because I believe also that I am connected to a power higher than myself, so I am only a medium. I am just a medium. Transfer this energy to the world unconsciously, not personally, not me, but because my belief and other people believe, we are together forming something and related to some power beyond ourselves. But I'm not speaking as a utopian. I believe that I'm really dealing with things with realistic approach. But it is not the common approach. It's not the common approach of how to change by using the same pattern of dealing with things from outside. It is let people get them through to the journey, what I call them, and this is some of the projects that we are having in the Human Foundation. We take people to a journey within themselves, and they see wonders. It brings them to life as they have never seen before. It brings them power as they have never seen before. It opens their eyes to their goals, and it opens their eyes to enjoy every moment in their life. And you can make a research about this project and how it has an impact on the people. So change is not going to happen tomorrow, but it's going to happen when we believe it will happen. And it's going to happen when we know our way to make it happen. And we know that what is going to happen is not by our personal small identity. It is by a power that beyond ourselves. So that is my response to your question.
Thank you. Excellent response. Dr. Beltagi, any other questions from the floor, comment?
Thank you very much. In fact, I'm very appreciated with the last three presenters for this nice presentation, and which deal with how we love the nature, how to respect the nature. In fact, we are not here to deal with the climate change relation with the plant and the animal or with the soil, but we should also deal with our concept related to our behavior against the nature. What is our performance? How to keep the nature clean? How to keep the nature in a better way? So, in my opinion, their suggestion or recommendation they recommended earlier, we should take it seriously. How to introduce this education, the natural education, at all levels of the state of education. It's not only the scientist's responsibility, but also it is the responsibility of the state, all the policymakers, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Environment, all the ministries related to the environment, because not many people knows about climate change, how to cope with the climate change, how to cope with the desertification, how to cope with the salinization. So it is all these modern items or phenomena, although it is not modern, but it is very common happen right now. Some parts of the world suffer from floods, the others suffer from dryness, the other suffer from forest fires, and so not many people, not only in Egypt, but maybe in other countries, don't know about this phenomena. So we have to educate and introduce these new phenomena related to environment pollution, environment maintenance, environment, what kind of, how we keep how to teach the kids to reduce the gas emission at the level of their houses, even that, how to keep the water, clean the water, how to keep the light, how to keep the dirties. All this kind of must be educated, must be introduced to this education system in all these countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was an excellent comment about the need for education at all levels, different kinds of education, but environment oriented. Any other comments on the floor before, if I have permission from Dr. Beltagi, to summarize the session? One question. Okay.
Yeah, sorry for coming back, but I just want to...
your name again?
Ajak.
Short memory.
Ajak, a South Sudanese, in Faculty of Medicine, Alexandria University. I fell in love with this topic. It was very nice. I just wanted to ask a brief question, and I also love to recommend what the last speaker, the professor, has just spoken right now, the comment he gave. That we don't just only have to be taught medicine, agriculture, or geology, or drugs in schools, but we need also to be taught how to deal with this environment. I see all of my colleagues here, whenever you buy these drinks, the bottle, you take water, then you throw it down. because you don't care, you took what you want. But that's not how we care about the environment. You need to take the bottle, put it in the dustbin. This is how we take care of environment. So the short notes that you guys are taking out is that when you buy water, take it, keep it until you find a dustbin, and then put it inside, instead of just throwing down anyhow. So I just want to ask a question. What are practical skills that you can tell us as the youth who are here in this hall, that when we go outside, we can apply them immediately as per now? Thank you.
Very nice.
This question is for you, Professor Lam.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice. I mentioned before the future of humanity lies in the younger generation. And you, the last speaker I'm referring to, and your age group is really the hope of the future. Therefore, making sure that you take the responsibility of protecting nature, restoring nature, and making sure that the nature is respected is really a very important part. And in that regard, each one of us has a responsibility to consume a natural resource in a way that it's sustainable. You know, we are already using 1.8 equivalent of planet Earth, 1.8. And some range from 1.5 to more. And this is because of overconsumption. So somewhere we have to learn how to minimize our demands so that nature can restore whatever we consume at a faster rate than what is happening. But I think you raised a very important question. I do not want to go into this. I give a question to my class. What are the 10 most important steps you can take to help nature? And I asked our speaker the same question this morning. Diet is very important. Water is very important. Energy use. Make sure you leave the building and light switched off. Adjusting thermostat. We came up with the question of laundry. Drying clothes, solar versus using gas and electricity. Simple thing. Multiplied by 8 billion can make a tremendous difference. So I think you asked a very, very important question. Dr. Baltagi, are we coming to the end of the session? If I may so, I want to thank all 5 speakers and then give some comments what I learned from this session.
I think we are coming to the end of the session, which is unfortunate. It's a very important session from a sense of the proper path for transition, rather than let them leave. Now we say let them live, not let them leave their countries. Let them live in their countries with nature to build it up. And therefore, we are coming to the end, and we are looking forward to hear your comments before the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I want to thank all the 5 speakers in this session. This session was excellent. Professor Duwari, Professor Sam Abdul Mahmood, Dr. Honorable Dana Mariam, Dr. Sharon Miharia, Dr. Elia Rafia, all of them were excellent. And this question of connectivity and where do we go to COP27? You raised the question of refugees, how they come. But I want to make 3 specific suggestions of how to move into COP27. Number 1 is use of fossil fuel. We are already at 420 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The maximum tolerable before the tipping point of 2 degrees centigrade and warmer is 560 parts. So 560 parts per million minus 420, that gives us a difference of 140 parts per million, and 2.13 gigaton of carbon combustion from fossil fuel is equal to 1 part per million of change. So that means we have a total possibility of burning fossil fuel carbon of no more than 300 gigatons. I got it, 560 minus 420 multiplied by 2.13. So the question that should be raised at COP27 from the conscious point of view, how does humanity divide that 300 gigaton of carbon pie so that it's fair and it's equitable and it's not devoted to some part of the world and not one? That's a very important consciousness question. And how can we implement non-carbon sources immediately so that restoring Mother Nature can help us improve the question of climate change mitigation? That's one part which I think is very important. The second part from the last speaker that Dr. Alia mentioned, interconnectivity. I really was reminded of the book by Barry Commoner. Many of you know who he was. He was the one who fought election against Ronald Reagan, but he was a professor in San Francisco. And his book called The Closing Circle. His Closing Circle book has 4 chapters. And the first chapter is everything is connected to everything else. Chapter number 1. Chapter number 2 is Mother Nature knows best. If you make a mistake, Mother Nature will never forgive you. Your mother will forgive you, but not Mother Nature. Mother Nature knows no mercy. The third chapter is there is no way to throw away. When we say throw away plastic bottle, throw away the garbage, throw away where? There is no way to throw away. Therefore, we must be very careful what we are throwing. Number 4 chapter is the most important one, and very time used as a common American slang, there is no such thing as a free lunch. People in Asia call there is no free lunch. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Everything has a price. And the ecological price of everything is much more than the economic prices. And we must be careful in choice of our lifestyle, what is the ecological price of it. And the final part I'd like to mention, which is a part of education, which is a responsibility, that the question from the student came. We are at the moment using 200 million tons of fertilizer. We must by 2050 bring it down to 100. By 2100, no more than 50 million tons by improving the efficiency. That is where the adaptation of agriculture comes in. Right now, we have 350 million hectares of irrigated land area. This irrigated land area uses 3,150 kilometer cube of water. This water consumption by agriculture must come down to 2,000 kilometer cube by 2050 and 1,000, one-third by 2100, and yet increase the area under irrigation from 350 to 750 million hectares of cropland. Through more innovative irrigation system, drip fertigation, vapor type irrigation system. The cropland area we have now is 1,500 million hectares. We waste 40-50% of the food and we use wrong type of food. This cropland area must be reduced to 750 million hectares, no more. Conservation agriculture, Dr. Prodhananda brought up only 200 million hectares now. All cropland, 750 million hectares, which I said to be maximum, should be only by conservation agriculture. Grazing land right now is 4 billion hectares. There is no reason to have more than 1 billion hectare grazing land. At the most 1,500 million. What I'm demanding from the policy maker is to reduce 5 billion hectares under agriculture to no more than half of that by the end of this century. Therefore, return land and water back to nature by adjusting your consumption. And returning land back to nature is the only solution of living in harmony with nature, where we know what we need and we must decide our consumption very carefully. We have been too greedy. There are 8.4 million forms of life. One form, human being. By the way, Honorable Diana, I got that number from Veda. That the modern estimate is 7. So 8.4 million is from Veda. So somewhere we are consuming 40% of global primary productivity, only one species. And these messages should come out loud and clear, where we try to say that agriculture, soil, dryland farming, the diet, food system must be very integral to solution to climate change and modern. With that, I really want to thank you, Dr. Baltagi, for your vision, for your leadership, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this session today. This afternoon. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
We would like, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank you, Professor Lal, for your time, for your wisdom and understanding for the way forward. And thank all the participants who are present with us physically and the virtual participation, as well as our colleagues who are joining us visually, because you don't see them, but there are so many colleagues from different parts of the world who are listening to what's being said here. It's a pleasure for us and honor that we are preparing ourselves to give a message to COP27, and hopefully we will find people to listen. Thank you very much, and I wish you all to have a good day, and thank you for your presence with us, virtually or actually. Thank you very much. Ma assalam. Just a second, please. The program tomorrow هيبتدي الساعة 9:30. بس أتمنى لإخواننا حاجة واحدة الواحد تعلمها طول عمره، إن إحنا نسمع. يعني to listen دي نعمة من عند ربنا. فإحنا بكرة هيتكلم، أول واحد هيتكلم اسمه جيفري ساكس. جيفري ساكس ده راجل one of the يعني واحد من أشهر الناس الاقتصاديين في العالم. خد درجة بروفيسور في جامعة هارفارد وهو عنده تقريبا 26 سنة، وده تشينر تراك بيسموه في أمريكا، يعني أستاذ متثبت. هذا الإنسان بيتكلم بحرية وبطلاقة كإنسان، وبالتالي بيعمل كريتيسيزم، بيعمل نقد للدول النامية والبلد وأمريكا من أجل عشان إيه؟ because he want to see a difference. هكلمنا لمدة نص ساعة، وقته قليل جدا. هو من جامعة كولومبيا، لكن أصلا عنده سنتر هناك اسمه الإيرث انستيتيوت وهو بيرأسه، وأيضا هو المستشار بتاع أمين عام الأمم المتحدة للتنمية المستدامة لمدة طويلة. فبالتالي احنا عايزين نبقى موجودين، هنسمع له، وبعد كده السيشن اللي تليها على طول هيبقى فيها ناس مسؤولين، رؤساء جمهوريات ورؤساء وزراء وناس مسؤولين في العالم كله. واحدة منهم كانت رئيسة الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة حوالي 3 مرات. فاحنا عايزين نستمع مع بعض عشان نستفيد ونفيد اللي حوالينا. فأتمنى أنكم تكونوا موجودين في الميعاد مسألة مش مسألة أسجل وأخد شهادة، مسألة إحنا هنطلع من الاجتماع ده بإيه؟ إيه اللي هيفيدنا وإيه اللي هيفيد الناس اللي حوالينا. وشكرا لكم جميعا على صبركم معانا لحد دلوقتي. شكرا.